What's up, everyone? It's Z, one of the associate directors at Day One, and I am here to talk to you about restorative practices, caregivers edition. So, today we are going to be talking about how to implement restorative practices into your family life so that you all can work on your communication skills and build healthy, happy people. So before we get started, just some logistics. Day one is working to end teen dating abuse and domestic violence. We do this through community education, supportive services, legal advocacy, and leadership development. We work with young people under the age of 24. This includes survivors to help create safe spaces for them and respectful partnerships. Some of our services that we offer are community education, which is what you have here. We have a legal team, a social services team, RAP coordinators and ERAP coordinators that work inside the schools to provide services to our young people, like individual counseling and group counseling. And if you need more information about any of these things, please feel free to contact me at the end of this video. So just to go over to some community agreements, please be kind to yourself. This is a webinar. You can feel free to pause it whenever you see fit. Get up and stretch, use the bathroom, do what you need. Listen with love. There are going to be some concepts that you may be like, this is a little weird or uncomfortable. That is okay. You know your young people better than anyone else. So take what you need and leave what you don't. Speak from the I. Think about how you feel in this situation when we're reflecting. Don't think about anyone else but you. Stories stay and lessons leave. We always want to make sure that any stories that you have here stay with you and you take the lessons with you. And last but not least, I promise we're going to have a good time. So, just to explain a little bit about what we're going to talk about today in our trajectory, we're going to talk about restorative practices and what they are and what they are not. We're going to talk about person and environment just a little bit. We're going to talk about our parenting styles just a little bit. We're going to talk about how restorative language can help improve the family dynamic. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for implementation of restorative language and concepts. I'm going to read this quote, and I want you to just reflect on what it means to you as I read through it. The golden rule of parenting is do unto your children as you wish your parents had done unto you. And that's by Louise Hart. So for me, what's coming up is I instantly think of do as I say, not as I do. Um, and I think about how my daughter does not like that. She doesn't believe in it. Um, and how, as a young person, I did not have the courage to say that I didn't like it either. Um, and so I think about how now, as an adult, I try to model some of the things that I want to see for my young person. Um, and really to implement the things that I wish my parents would have done with me, or maybe even some of the things that they did with me that were really, really great. So that's what I think about. I would love to know what you think about. Drop it in the chat. Super interesting. Drop it in the comments as well. I just want to highlight that being a parent is literally the hardest job ever. Some day it feels like your kids love you more than anything, and then other days you're just like, what is going on? Restorative practices are a great way to hold each other accountable and also help to teach young people about what the community needs as a family. It's about us tapping into who we are as parents to think about what do I need? How can I be a better parent, right? How can I respond and not react? Because we know that things are happening so quickly that sometimes we just need a moment to breathe and stay still. And restorative practices really taps into that. There are no books you have to read. There are no workshops you have to do. The only thing that you have to do is tune in to your inner self and think about what's going to make the most sense for your family and your family's dynamic. So let's take a moment to reflect. I want you to think back to when you were a young person, and this could be elementary, middle school, or high school. What did it feel like to be a kid? What is something that your parents or caregivers did that you absolutely hated during a conversation or disagreement? And you can feel free to write these things down or just make mental notes. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit. What does it feel like now when someone you're talking with does that same thing? How does it feel when someone in your family invalidates your feelings, thoughts, ideas, or experiences? When we become parents or caregivers, we tend to fall into one of two categories. We either fall very closely in alignment with how we grew up and how we were raised, or we want to fall completely opposite, all the way on the other side of the spectrum of what was done to us, right? We do this for multiple reasons, right? Either we loved our family dynamic and the way we grew up, or we wish that we could have been somewhere else and done something differently, right? And then we become parents and caregivers, right? And we realize that parenting is super hard, right? And there's a super long spectrum. And some days you're doing a great job, and some days you feel like I'm not doing great. First of all, let me tell you something. You're doing a great job because if you're watching this webinar, it means that you want to learn more and you want to be a better parent. And at the end of the day, that's what good parents do. We learn and we grow. Most of us are just winging it anyways. But since you're here and you're watching this webinar is going to help you to become a better listener, a better communicator, and help you to meet your young people where they are. This diagram shows how individuals are influenced by different systems. And now, before you tune out, because I know, let me tell you why it's relevant. We're going to use this to become better parents and better caregivers by looking at the diagram and thinking about who we are and how we see the world. And then we're going to think about how the world sees us and how our kids see us, okay? We are not going to look at this whole diagram. We're really going to focus on the first two circles, okay? The smallest circle, which is intrapersonal, speaks directly to the individual. And for by definition, I want you to think about yourself as a young person or who you are right now, currently. Okay. Think about the characteristics in the first circle, as well as attributes on how you define your gender, your religious beliefs, your racial or ethnic identity, your sexual orientation, your economic status, your values, your goals. You might want to think about your expectations, your age, your genetics, right? Your resiliency and coping skills, maybe even your time management skills, health literacy, stigma of accessing counseling, right? All of these things form the individual perspective. You should be thinking about how you see yourself within the larger picture of the world, right? And although some of these characteristics were defined at birth, like your age, some were from the second and third circles in the diagram, okay? We know that we're not just here, right? Like we didn't just conjure up and be like, oh yeah, I am the way I am because this is just how I was born, right? We know that there are lots of things that go into who we are and how we become who we are, right? So now looking at that second circle, interpersonal processes and primary groups, okay? When you're thinking about your parenting style, going back to what I said earlier about how we either want to be really close to what we knew and what we grew up in or really really far away, this is where your parenting style may come from, right? The way you interact with your children may be built from this bubble, right? How how you've had children, right? You're the way you see your children, the way you see all children, right? That authoritative versus maybe a little more lenient, right? Thinking about your family, your friends groups, right? Supervisors, advisors, right? Rituals, customs, traditions. All of these things come from those primary groups in that second bubble, right? It's really, really important to think about what my family dynamic was growing up. We all had something, right? It may not have been what we wanted, but we had something, right? Some of us had amazing childhoods growing up, right? And we think about how we take the things that we loved and we transcend them into our kids. We want to give them all the love and guidance and support, right? And even if sometimes we are in alignment with what our parents wanted for us, right? We may do it a little differently, right? We may not like to have been yelled at. We may not like to have been spanked, right? So we may not do those things to our kids, right? Or maybe we do, right? Because we are in alignment with what our family group was as a as a young person growing up into adulthood. This is super important because it really gets us to think about and frame how we see the world, right? It really gets us to think about how we see kids, right? In the third circle, I just want to highlight institutional things, right? So some of us as young people may have had contact with certain systems like the foster care system or the juvenile justice system, right? Maybe the welfare system. And all of us have had contact with the education system. These those systems have influenced us in ways that we may not think about on a day to day because we really think about our families, right? And we think about our families and our friends, right? And those dynamics. But when you think about the larger picture and how we were influenced by the schools, how we were influenced by other systems like, again, foster care and juvenile justice or welfare, right? Thinking about being in poverty, right? We can think about how those things also influence the way we parent, the way we see our kids, things that we want, things that we don't want for our kids. So take all of those things into account because everything that happens for us teach, teaches us how to be the adults that we are today. Just wanted to mention the last two buckets are community and policy. Community is very clear. It's where you grew up, right? And maybe in your neighborhood, it was super normative for certain things to happen, right? It may have been super normative for, I don't know, Big Mama to sit in front of the building, right? Or you to call friends, moms, auntie, and uncle, right? That is something that transcends through time and is something that we bring within our parenting styles as well when we are thinking about how we are parenting our kids. Why is this important? You might wonder, right? I'm going to tell you why. We're going to watch this small video clip and it talks about different parenting styles. But before I even press play, I want to make a disclaimer that although this video is backed by research, it is not a tell all be all to parenting. It does not mean that you will fit into one box just because these are the four styles. So I just want to put that out there, but this is the idea to get you to start thinking about where you align as a parent. What things you kind of feel like, oh, that's me, right? I do that, or no, I definitely don't do that, or maybe I want to do that, right? This video is to really look at those things and think about the positive outcomes that come from different parenting styles.
Welcome to Mr. Brain. Parenting is a wonderful journey, but let's face it, it can be challenging too. That's why we're here to help. Our parenting series is your ultimate guide to becoming an extraordinary parent. In the realm of child psychology, researchers like Diana Baumrind dedicated their lives to understanding the effects of different parenting styles. Through their meticulous research, they unraveled 4 distinct styles: authoritarian, permissive, authoritative, and uninvolved. Let's explore each one and discover their implications for our children's development. 1. Authoritarian parenting. Imagine the Smiths, a family with strict rules and high expectations. Mr. Smith believes in complete obedience from his children, Emily and Jacob. In their household, discipline is paramount. However, their parenting approach can be characterized as authoritarian. Mr. and Mrs. Smith's parenting style is marked by a desire for control and adherence to rules without much room for flexibility. For instance, Emily is passionate about painting and dreams of becoming an artist. However, her father disapproves of her creative pursuits, considering them a waste of time. He insists that she focuses solely on academic excellence. As a result, Emily feels stifled and discouraged from pursuing her true passion. The authoritarian parenting style, while seeking obedience and discipline, often sacrifices the child's autonomy and stifles their individuality. In the future, children raised under authoritarian parenting may struggle with making decisions, lack confidence in themselves, and find it hard to express their thoughts and feelings. 2. Permissive parenting. Now let's meet the Johnsons, a family that practices permissive parenting. Their household is filled with love, but rules and boundaries are scarce. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson shower their children, Lily and Ethan, with affection, allowing them to do as they please without much guidance or structure. For example, Lily wants to go out with friends late at night, even on school nights. Her parents rarely say no and often give in to her desires. While this permissive approach fosters a sense of freedom and flexibility, it can lead to challenges in self-discipline and respecting authority figures. Lily struggles to understand boundaries and lacks the guidance necessary to make responsible decisions. In the future, children raised under permissive parenting may have trouble controlling their impulses, struggle with authority figures, and find it challenging to set and achieve goals. Without proper structure and guidance, they may face difficulties as they grow up. 3. Authoritative parenting. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the Parkers, a family that embraces the authoritative parenting style. Mr. and Mrs. Parker understand the importance of balance. They create a nurturing environment while setting clear expectations and boundaries for their children, Mia and Noah. For instance, when Noah faces a disagreement with his friend, Mrs. Parker sits down with him, encouraging him to express his feelings and find a solution together. She values Mia's opinions and encourages open communication. Noah feels heard and respected, fostering a strong bond between parent and child. The Parkers' authoritative style provides structure, support, and guidance while nurturing their children's independence and individuality. 4. Uninvolved parenting. Lastly, let's step into the Wilsons' home, where uninvolved parenting takes hold. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are busy professionals and neglect their children's needs. Sarah and Daniel are left to fend for themselves, lacking guidance, emotional support, and a sense of security. For instance, Alex participates in a school cycle race, but his parents fail to attend or show support. They are too consumed with their own work commitments to prioritize their interests and achievements. Alex feels neglected and unimportant, as if his passions and accomplishments go unnoticed. This uninvolved parenting style often leads to low self-esteem, emotional instability, and challenges in building meaningful connections. Understanding these parenting styles empowers us to make informed choices and create nurturing environments that best suit our children's needs according to time and situation. Join us on the journey.
All right. So again, you may have watched this video and started to think about like where do you align as a parent? First, again, I want to say you are doing an amazing job as a parent, as a caregiver. You're getting up, you're showing your kids that you're doing the best that you can. And for that, we commend you. This is for us to think outside the box a little bit more about how we can grow as parents because although we may be the best parents we can always get better. And that is the idea to continue to learn and to continue to grow so that we can raise healthy, holistic children.
Welcome to Mr. Brain. Parenting is a wonderful.
All right. So now let's explore a little bit further what we just looked at in the other video. We They explained the difference between authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and uninvolved, right? So what you see on the screen um, just talks a little bit about what the impact of different styles are. On this line, the lines show how involved or flexible a parent a specific parent group is. We are not going to get into the different types of parenting that you see on the screen, but you can feel free to literally Google any one of these to help understand a little bit more about what it looks like. But what I do want to do is highlight some of the things that we see on the screen, and in just to help make it make sense for all of us. You may have noticed that under authoritative, it says best parenting style. We also want to remember that this was based on research that has been around for many, many years. The reason why it's considered the best is because it allows for young people to have flexibility, but also clear guidelines, right? It's it allows for kids to help make decisions and have agency, but also have clear thought patterns, right? So, for example, my young person wants to go outside. I say yes, but be back by 6 o'clock, right? So I'm giving that clear direction, right? You can go outside and have free time with your friends, but make sure you're back home at this time, right? So I'm teaching consequence. So I'm teaching consequence, right? I'm also teaching how to be flexible, but also how to be accountable, right? Because if you get home late, then I have to show you what accountability might look like, right? So you think about again restorative practices and what they align with. They align most closely with authoritative parenting styles. Also, want to say that parenting affects children in 7 different ways, right? Emotional, cognitive, which is their brain development, right? Social, moral, which is their values and their ethics, right? Um, Cultural, physical, and mental, right? And we looked at that and we talked a bit about it in 2 slides ago when we looked at the person and environment, right? We raise our children, it mainly thinks about how we raise our children versus how we want our children to be raised, right? What traditions we have, what values and cultural norms we want to teach our kids, right? All of those things go into that. So, referring back to the chart, right? And really looking at the different ways that we show up as parents, right? We want to make sure that we are highlighting and thinking about how can I be a flexible thinker? How can I show empathy to my kids, right? You might be asking yourself, how can I be more important, more supportive, right? You might be thinking, like, you know what? I might align more with authoritative, right? That's tough love, right? Because that's how I was raised, right? And I turned out fine, right? And again, taking everything with a grain of salt, but thinking about restorative practices and how we can be, we can still show our children and give our children the tools that they need for us to be respectful, to be honest, to be trustworthy, to be whatever value you see fit, right? We can still give them those things and also use restorative language and teach them how to have restorative conversations, for them to be accountable for their actions. We can teach them all those things. And I think that that is the beauty in just thinking about where we align as parents in this diagram and just throughout life in general. Again, so why do I need to know all of this, right? It's very simple. Happy parents raise happy kids. That's it. That's the bottom line, right? Children who grow up with supportive parents are likely to be more emotionally mature. right? They're able to kind of really think about their emotions and be like, all right, I feel like this, right? And I feel like this because I'm having a bad day, because I'm upset, whatever that looks like, right? They have better social skills and have stronger self confidence, right? We want our kids to be confident, right? We want them to be able to speak their truth and believe their truth and us believe it for them, right? They feel greater happiness and well being, right? We want them to be happy. We want them to smile and love. We love to see our kids smile, right? We love to hear them laugh. I know that's my favorite sound, hearing my daughters laugh. Um, and they do better academically, right? Because we may not be the best at math, right? We may not be the best at reading, but we try our best to support them, right? Like, let's sit down, let's figure it out together as a team because I might not know, but I might know someone who does. So let me help you get to someone who can support you in math or who can support you in reading. Restorative practices align with those things and they help children and parents learn concepts like forgiveness, right? And it is super important for us to teach our kids how to forgive, right? It's super important for us to teach them how to apologize. Patience, right? Thinking about our busy days and busy schedules, right? Sometimes our patience is just thin. Empathy and understanding, right? Putting ourselves in their perspective, taking perspective, having them learn how to have empathy and put themselves in our shoes at some point, right? Effective communication, accountability, right? On both our ends, right? Did I respond or did I react, right? Social responsibility and justice, right? So thinking about that larger picture, right? They restorative practices don't just work for thinking about me and you, right? Now you're thinking about your sibling. Then you're thinking about your friends outside, right? What's just? What makes sense? And last but not least, love, right? And we love our kids. We want them to be the best versions of themselves. We want them to be independent. We want them to gain responsibilities for their age, right? We try not to overparent them and overprotect them, but we also want them to know that like we're there for them and we love them. It also helps us understand our children's temperament and stage of development, right? Because sometimes as parents, we're asking our kids to do something that they may not necessarily know how to do, not because they're not smart, but because they're just not at that point in their lives where they're able to make that choice, right? And sometimes we think that they are because they're mature in certain ways, right? But at the end of the day, they're just 7 or they're just 10. And restorative practices help us remember those things, right? And to really respond in a way that is age appropriate to our young person's needs. And in a little while, we're going to do some scenarios to play around to see like what our thinking is. So now we're going to watch another 3-minute clip about how effective restorative practices can be when they're implemented into the home and into the school environment. So both.
Restorative practices, to me, in my experience here, has been getting closer to the student, getting closer to forming a closer relationship, understanding what's really going on.
When you consciously work to adapt a restorative philosophy in your own home, ultimately you're going to improve your relationship with your kids. Every single body that walks into a school needs to understand the restorative practice. And parents are pivotal to that because that's who children are most likely spending the majority of their time with. And so the message needs to be consistent. If a student is in a restorative classroom and they go home and they're getting a different kind of messaging from their parents, it makes it very confusing. There's a lack of consistency and there's a lack of buy-in to the process of restorative work. When we're working toward establishing relationship and respect, every person who has contact with that student needs to be on the same page. If your teacher is acting in a certain way in their classroom, where they're trying to treat their children with respect and establish a relationship, that being echoed at home is only going to make the child more successful in their school career.
We're all on the same page. We are working together. We understand what's going on, and it definitely reinforces it. If there's consistency and cooperation and communication between school and home, then I think the chances of success and changing the behavior through consistency are going to be much, much higher.
If I could get parents to really hear the heart that we want a lasting change in your child. We don't want to punish your child, because guess what? Your child is probably going to make another mistake, probably even before they leave this room, you know what I mean? I think that if we can speak to that part of them, they'll understand why their presence, their buy-in, and their understanding is so important. And I think this process is a way of telling the parent and showing the parent and demonstrating to the parent, I honor what you have trusted me with, and let's work together to make this the most powerful, impactful human being that they can be.
I really felt like they were my co-parent during the day. They had established a relationship with the child, and for that reason, she liked them. She listened to them when they gave her guidance. She was willing to go along.
So as you can see in that clip, it talks about how restorative practices can not only help in school, but also at home, right? We know that our young people, most of them go to schools that have to deal with zero tolerance, right? And a lot of them are not restorative aligned schools. But by implementing restorative practices at home, you're teaching them how to communicate and advocate for themselves in school, right? You're teaching them how to communicate and advocate for themselves in other places outside of the home. And if your child is lucky enough to be part of a school that is in a restorative way, it makes it even stronger for kids to see that there's an alignment between what we're doing at home and what we're doing at school. And it doesn't get more powerful than that. So, when you're thinking about restorative conversations and you're thinking about how can I answer questions or respond to my young person in a way that shows that I am loving and caring, here are some questions for you to consider and to ask yourself. Do I show my child or children I love them? And if so, how do I show them? Right? Do I give them hugs and kisses? Right? Do I put my phone down when they're telling me a story? Do we play games? What do we do? Right? Do I really listen to them? And I think that even I have this struggle sometimes, right? Where there are things happening and I may be working or something's going on, and my daughter is telling me a story because she just got home from school, and I'm not paying attention in the way that I should. So I have to check myself, right? I have to say, you know what? I'm sorry. Give me a second. Let me come back. Let's come back to this conversation in a minute because I'm not giving you my full and undivided attention so that she knows that she has to give me a moment and I have a time where I can kind of just finish what I need to do so I can let her know that what she is telling me is super important. Do I allow them to have agency over their actions and consequences? So this is about voice and choice, right? And it really comes down to when I am parenting, right? Do I give my child an option? That's it, right? When they do something wrong, am I giving them a chance to figure out how to make it right? Or am I just saying, this is what it is, right? And there is no other way around it, right? That flexible thinking. Do I show them I understand their feelings, right? For young people, it's super important to validate their feelings, right? As adults, we reflected on how we feel when we are not being validated and we feel like people don't care about our feelings, that is super important for kids as well, right? Because they want us to show them that we care about how they feel, right? Whether they did the right thing or the wrong thing. Do I provide routines and guidance that help my children feel safe and secure? Right? So, what is the routine? What's the norm in your family, right? Do y'all eat together? Do y'all go to bed? Do the kids go to bed at a certain time, right? Do they have a certain amount of screen time? What does that look like? Am I clear about how I want my kids to behave, right? What is the threshold? You can do A, B, C, and D, but you cannot do E, F, G, and H, right? Very clear guidelines. Am I calm when giving feedback about behavior? And I think if you are a parent, we have all questioned this question, right? Like, am I calm? Sometimes, right? But maybe not all the time, right? And really tapping into how can I be more calm when I'm giving feedback about their behavior so that they can understand what I'm saying out of empathy, compassion, and love, and not out of frustration and anger, right? Or tiredness. Is my child able to understand why a behavior is unacceptable? Right? So thinking about those ages and stages, right? If my kid is 5, right? Am I explaining it to them in a way that a 5-year-old is going to understand or a way that a 10-year-old is going to understand, right? Two different situations, two different scenarios, right? Meeting my kid where they are. Can my child see how their behavior affects others, right? So now we're thinking about consequential thinking, right? We're thinking about perspective, right? What you did, how that affects what your sister needs or what I need or what your brother needs, right? Can you see the bigger picture, right? Also, again, thinking about the stage of development and the age in which your young person is when helping them explain. Do I help them find ways to get what they need? So, am I just giving them whatever they want, or am I sitting down and helping them think about what their needs are, right? Okay, so you want to buy a pony, right? How can you get a pony? What can I help you do to get a pony without buying it, right? That might look like you saving your money. That might look like you doing some extra chores, right, in order to make the money to be able to buy your own pony. We know it's going to take a while, but at least we know you'll be saving towards that pony. Do my kids know they can come to me when they need support? That's a huge one, right? Because we want to make sure that our kids know that we love them and that we're going to do the best that we can to support them, whether they're wrong or right. And restorative questioning and restorative practices is really about that support factor, right? That building a relationship with my young person. I love you regardless. So I am going to build with you regardless. I'm going to be there to support you no matter what. Whether you did the right thing or the wrong thing, I'm going to support you. And in what ways do I show up for my children when I can't physically be there? Sometimes you can't be there. Sometimes there's a show and you have to work. Sometimes you just don't feel well, right? And as a parent, it hurts my heart when I can't be there, but I also know that I can't be everywhere all the time, right? How do I show up enough? But when I don't show up, what do I do to ensure that I'm still interested in the thing at hand? If it's a show, am I having her sing the song to me? While when I'm home, what does that look like? Am I having someone record? What does that look like? It's super important to show up even when you can't physically be there because you want to be your child's biggest cheerleader. And that's what restorative practices is all about. Being your child's biggest cheerleader. So now we're going to take a brain break and you can feel free to pause or play the music. This is a 3-minute relaxation. It's going to play out. When you're ready, you can press play and we will go into the next thing. All right. I hope we're feeling good. I hope you had a beautiful break. So let's get into the second part of this video. The way we talk to our children become their inner voice. Peggy O'Mara. Since we've been together, we've talked a ton about who we are and how we parent. As we move into the second part of this webinar, let's start to think about the future. In a little while, we will play a game that lets us that gets us to think a little bit more about the future for our children and where we are versus where we want to be. So, right now we're going to watch a small video about restorative conversations and how to have a restorative conversation. Um, so now that we all have this little bit of background, right, thinking about how we talk, right, how we see our kids, right, let's watch this video. Feel free to get a piece of paper and jot things down. All the links will be provided in the description, but you can definitely feel free to take notes.
Restorative practices teaches kids how to resolve conflict peacefully. Restorative practices promote empathy, responsibility, and respect. These practices focus on repairing harm, building relationships, and giving everyone a voice. Restorative conversations are a transformative way for everyone, especially young people, to navigate difficult conversations. These conversations are really helpful when managing conflict with peers. Here are 6 steps you can take to start having restorative conversations with your peers. Step number 1, prepare yourself. Before you can resolve conflict, set an intention to connect before you correct. In other words, you must have an understanding mindset that is ready to listen and work towards finding a peaceful resolution. You can do this by focusing on your breathing. Breathe in deeply for 3 seconds, and then exhale deep and slow for 6 seconds. Be sure to use I statements. For example, I felt angry, or I felt upset, or I felt hurt. You can also use I noticed that as a way to start a sentence. Remember, go low and slow. Take your time. Don't rush the restorative process. Acknowledge your feelings no matter how deep or hard. Ensure everyone has a voice and has a chance to answer each of the restorative questions. Remember, it's okay to take a break at any time during the process. Step number 2, acknowledge your own personal needs, emotions, and thoughts. Step number 3, use restorative questions. It's important that you're able to take the perspective of others. Each person should explain the situation from their perspective. Try to see the situation from the point of view of the other person. Remember, people may often feel very differently about the same situation. Ask questions such as, what happened? What's been going on for you? What were you feeling? Step number 4, how can we repair the harm that has been done? You must work together to decide how to make things better or solve the problem. Step number 5, come up with a shared agreement. This can be a verbal agreement, a checklist, or even a written contract. And then step number 6, check in and check up. Address any concerns that might come up in the future. Remember, conflict is inevitable. It's gonna happen. But it can be transformed through restorative conversations. Perhaps the most important thing to remember about having restorative conversations is to show compassion, to be authentic, and practice empathy. Be sure to subscribe.
So, thinking about that video, what are some honest thoughts that come to mind when you're thinking about restorative practices? Where might you have seen restorative practices before, or maybe even restorative circles done? Is there anything in this video that you already do with your kids? So, like, for example, I try my best to ask questions and not give lectures. I really, really do. Sometimes I don't always do it. It's hard, but I try. Um, are there any things that you would like to explore? Right. So just thinking about like the conversation process that you've seen before you, right? Do you think that it's something that you'd be interested in, something worth a try? Thinking about your children's age, and where they are in their stages of development. The main thing to remember when you are trying to implement restorative practices into your family is that it takes time, right? Talking and trying to be understanding can be hard when you're thinking about cultural differences and thinking about the way we grew up versus the way some people will call gentle parenting, right? This is not gentle parenting, right? There's a completely different definition for it. This is restorative practices, right? And it is found to be effective in many places, many different ways. And it's definitely worth an opportunity and just getting your kids to feel comfortable talking to you and to comfortable getting to know you and comfortable with you responding and not reacting. I think that they will love it. You will find that they will love it. Just got to give it a chance. All right. So what we have on this screen is a little bit more about how to have a restorative conversation. The links to these things will be below, but this is affective questioning. And really all it is to get to the root cause of what is going on, right? So these are questions that you can ask to kind of validate your young people and help them to understand their behavior and also to communicate more effectively, right? Really, really thinking about young people, super young, right? Our elementary schoolers, right? Our super young middle schoolers, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, right? Validate feelings is phase one, right? Are you all right? How are you feeling right now? What do you need now? What will make it better? How can I help? Right? Just thinking about their feelings, right? Then phase two, you want to rewind, right? And build perspective. What happened? What led up to this? What were you thinking at the time? And how do you feel? How did you feel when that happened, right? Really getting them to think about like what were you thinking in that moment, right? Because in the social work world, we think about CBT, right? And for some of us, if you've ever done therapy, you may have done CBT, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy. And all it is connecting how your thoughts affect your feelings and your feelings affect your behaviors, right? So I thought about it and now I felt about it and now I behaved about it, right? And that's what that is, right? Asking, well, what did you feel, right? What did it feel like when that happened, right? Because for us, we feel all the time. And for young people, they feel all the time. So we want to tap into that and get them to start thinking about what their feelings are, right? Because often they'll say, I don't know, right? When really they do know, they just don't know what words, right? And then last, wind up, right? So that's the repair part. Moving forward, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? What do you need to see happen now? What can you do in a similar situation? So, getting them to build a bigger perspective, right? So, if something like this happens again, what could you do? Right? Getting them to really think, what can I do if I'm in this situation? This is not the first or only time. I may get frustrated again. What can I do to ensure that I am doing the best that I can if I am in a similar situation, right? And on the right hand side are just some more questions, right? And backup ways. If your young people says that they don't know, you ask them what happened, right? What was happening before I asked you to stop playing? What do you think I saw before I took the blink away? To really get them to elicit those real answers, right? You want to pull it out of them, right? Some people would say Socratic questioning, right? Pulling it out of them so that they understand that, like, I don't know is not an answer, right? Like, let me help you figure out what it is. So Jeffco came up with some really great examples of ways that we can teach logical consequences to our young people. This is really based on age. A lot of these are very age appropriate for our elementary school young people, if not all of them. Um, we want to remember that we all make mistakes, and in a restorative household, we want to make the children feel connected to the family, not isolate them. That is super important because we grew up in communities where if someone does the wrong thing, they're taken away, right? That's why we have the jail system. That's why we have foster care, right? They're taken away. We want to change that narrative and bring families closer together so that they understand that if I'm gonna make a mistake, I'd rather make it at home where there are people that love me and can help me be better and support me into the next steps of my life than by myself or in public where the consequences may not be what we want them to be, right? We want it to be directly connected to the harm caused, right? Logical consequences, right? And support learning and skill building. We want to support their learning and their skill building. So, from the top, increase responsibility, right? And these are some things, again, they're consequences, right? We call them punishments, but these are consequences, things that they can do if they mess up, right? They might set the table each night the week. They might help with dishes. They might create the grocery list with the budget and help with the shopping, right? Especially for those little ones, right? Who like to be so helpful, right? They're giving back to the community in that way, right? They're building a relationship. So spend an hour after school playing with their sibling, a game of their choosing, or interview a family member to get to learn more about them, right? You might have to write a little short story about them so that they can learn more about the person that they may have caused harm to. Commitment to learning something educational, research the impact of marijuana on the adolescent brain and possible replacement outlets, right? So let's say a kid gets caught smoking, right? That could be a really good one, right? Let's talk about I want you to research and you tell me what might happen to your brain, right? While you're doing that at 12, 13, 14, 15, right? Research screen time and the recommendations for youth, right? And this could be for a upper kid, maybe like a 10-year-old who's like in the fifth grade, maybe even a fourth grader, because by that time they know how to go on the internet and find everything, right? Commitment to build a new skill. How to use a stove or other appliances properly by helping to prepare a meal, right? So getting into that like third grade stage where like they can help make a meal, right? They may know how to do little things. They might know how to like boil a hot dog or something. That this is the stage where like you can have them kind of do something like that. Make a list of 3 self-calming techniques they can use when they feel angry or frustrated. This transcends through time. Any kid can make a list, right? Even if they don't know how to spell. I would say maybe second grade up, maybe even a first grader, honestly, because they know what they need. We just have to help them get it. Creating their own accountability plan. Create a schedule that lays out when they will do schoolwork, chores, practice, followed by 3 strategies to help them follow the schedule, right? And this one is really dope because it's not something that I've ever thought about, but I do think that it would be something really good, especially for the older group who may have a lot more things going on, right? How can I make sure that my kid gets to karate, does her chores, does her homework, right? Creating an accountability plan and then placing it somewhere where they can see it is super important because it will help them not miss the things that they said that they want to do and we want them to do as well. Affirmations and appreciation. Write notes listing things they appreciate about their different family members. List 5 strengths their sibling has and deliver it in a creative way, right? Again, thinking about if you harm someone in your family, how can you write things to make it right and make your family feel good, right? Being part of that community. And last but not least, an action that helps to change how the child is seen within the family, right? So the kid makes a mistake, now that's my bad little brother or my bad little sister, right? We want to change that narrative. So maybe, for example, for the one who's frequently causes the family to be late, get up early to make lunches for everyone to help them get out the door, right? So now I'm giving you ownership, right? You got to get up early to do this thing so that we all can get out on time. Okay, so these are just some tips. There are tons of things out there that you can do. Let your mind go wild. But the most important thing is that they are also helping to build with you what their consequence is. Okay, so another great nugget that I found out there in the abyss is creating family values. So I want you to take a moment and you can pause if you need to. And just like community agreements, all our families have values. So I want you to take a moment to use the values on the screen and rank them from your top priority to your lowest priority. So I hope you've listed yours. In order from most important to least important for me, I would say is love is the most important. Then it would be kindness and honesty tied. Shared voice and support tied. I can't really rate them. I think that they're all probably equally important. Um, but you could use this example, maybe color, maybe write them out or cut them out, and have your kids align what they which values are important to them, especially if they're little kids, right? Who may not necessarily know how to write. You can explain to them like what love, honesty, kindness is, and you can put your own up there. Every family has values. With older kids, you can definitely have them write out 1 or 2 values that they want to bring to the table, and list them somewhere so that they can see that, like, just like a community norm, this is our community values, and we are a community, we're family, we love each other, and this is how we are going to honor that, right? And then also define what those things mean, right? So if someone says respect, right, what does respect mean in our house, right? So that there's a clear understanding and definition to what respect is, or what honesty is, or what love or authenticity is, so that if someone goes against that value, you're able to hold everyone accountable to the same standard. On the right hand side of the screen, this is um, a great little nugget to look at another way that you can create your own family values. Kind of talking about some of the things I just spoke about. This is from San Diego's Office of Education. Super great resource. If you want a bigger one, it will be in the resources below, but you can also just Google this and it'll come up as well. All right. So we talked a little bit earlier about forgiveness, right? And we've talked about other values that restorative practices teach, right? We have to give our honorable mention to forgiveness, right? Children and young adults often find it hard to apologize, right? Sometimes as adults, we find it hard to apologize, right? Children watch the way their parents and caregivers talk to one another and how they show forgiveness, right? This is something that we have to model to our kids. When we make a mistake, we have to own up to it, right? This chat shows prompts on how we as parents can be better at showing forgiveness and teaching forgiveness, right? So the next time you make a mistake, you can definitely try these. You can have your child or children try these. It's super simple. Most of them are things we've heard before, right? Say what you're sorry for. I'm sorry for hurting your feelings, right? Say why it was wrong. It was wrong because I should not have hit you. Accept full responsibility. I accept full responsibility for what I said or did, right? I I accept I'm trying to be accountable for losing my temper when I should have asked you what was going on. Very simple. Ask how to make amends, right? How can I make this better? How can I make it right? Thinking about those restorative questions, right? What can I do to make it better for the family, for you, for me? Commitment to not doing it again. Moving forward, I promise to, or I'm going to try not to, or I'm going to do better at, right? Ask for forgiveness. Will you accept my apology? Very simple, very clear. And then thank them. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, right? And as parents, it's super important that we thank our kids, right? Thank you for letting me know where my blind spot was. It's the only way for us to show that like adults make mistakes too. Just want to remember that there's some things that we do naturally that are not apologies, right? I'm sorry you feel that way. I know that we talk to our friends like that sometimes, right? But to our young people, we want to make sure that we are not modeling that because then they will model that, right? I'm sorry you misinterpreted what I said. You misunderstood what I meant. I'm sorry, but what about that time you it was your fault that right? We want to take responsibility and ownership, and we want to make sure that we are teaching our young people to do that as well. So this is a great tool just to as a reminder to help teach your little ones and your big ones on how to be accountable for their actions through restorative ways. Now just think about those beautiful I statements. I statements can be helpful, especially for younger children, because again, it helps them connect their thoughts to their feelings and their feelings to their behaviors, right? So I want you to try it for yourself very quickly. I want you to think about a moment that your child did something nice for you and fill in the blanks. I am going to model. I feel really excited when my daughter makes breakfast for me because I am tired and I don't feel like cooking all the time. I'd like for her to make breakfast for me every weekend. But I know it's not going to happen, but it's the thought. So you can use this as a prompt to help your children um, connect their feelings to their thoughts, right? It's very, very simple. You can literally do it like this. Tell me how you feel. What's the feeling? I feel hurt, right? When, why, right? Why do you feel hurt? When do you feel hurt? When X, Y, and Z. Kids will get it, they'll understand. I also have a great resource for a feelings chart that little kids really um could really use, and also middle schoolers because it adds words other than like mad or sad. It adds bigger words to the system so that they can start to really understand what their feelings are, right? And that maybe they're frustrated or maybe they're annoyed, not just mad. I'll make sure to drop that link below as well. So just wanted to give a highlight as to what restorative practices are not. Um, they are not only a response to conflict, restorative practices are also for all the great things that are happening in the world, all the great things that are happening in families, right? It's a way to celebrate wins, to show love, to show happiness, to show compassion and guidance. Um, it is not being soft on children, or eliminating consequences at all, it is not gentle parenting. It is still giving them consequences, but helping them be in part of the process. And if anything, it actually is giving more consequences because now you're starting to understand what consequential thinking is because you are part of the building process. It's not punitive, right? So it's not spanking our child or one of the other culturally normed things that we know. But it's really getting them to talk and us to talk, so expressing our feelings. It's not an intervention or a program or a set of prompts, a band-aid. It is the way we live. It's the way we communicate. It's just the way that we love on one another. That's really all it is. It's not something that you can kind of be like, I'm going to try this for a little while and see if it works. It's something that's going to take time. Like I always tell people, if I've been the same way for 32 years, it's going to take me longer than 2 weeks or a month for me to unlearn the things that I know. So stick in there, hang in there. Your kids will get it. And so will you too. Restorative justice alone is not meant to be a punishment and is no way to reframe or rename damaging parenting styles. So, thinking back to those parenting styles from earlier, restorative practice is not something that you can just say, oh, well, I don't know, I was a disengaged parent and now I'm a restorative parent, right? But I'm still doing the same things of a disengaged parent, right? It doesn't work like that. And last but not least, again, it's not something that you can finish, right? This is a way of life, right? It's a way of thinking about responding and not reacting every single time. It takes a commitment. It is not easy, but it's worth it because in the end, you will unlearn some things that you didn't like as a kid, and your kids will learn some things that they will pass on for generations and generations. And that's what we want. So we are coming to the end of our webinar, but I always want to make sure that we have some scenarios because I know y'all learned all this great stuff, and now it is time to put it to the test. So I want you to think about how you would approach this conversation, okay? Your son Mark, who's 14, steals a roll of quarters out of your room to go play at the arcade. When confronted about it, he lies and says it wasn't him. Take a moment and hit pause on the video and reflect on your answer. And when you're ready, hit play. So, what would you do? First, you ask your child if they know and understand the family's values around honesty and stealing. Then ask them what they were thinking when they chose to take the quarters out of your room. Try to keep your tone at a neutral tone in a non judgmental way, which is really, really hard to do. But just being mindful that this is about getting the responses that is going to help him have ownership and accountability for his actions. All right. It also can be really hard if you're used to yelling, right? Because some of us, we're loud culturally, right? So just keep those things in mind and take your time, right? Remember, it's not something that's going to change overnight and that it's a process, all right? Finally, you want to follow up by asking questions that will get Mark to think about how you feel. How do I feel now that you took my orders? Mark is old enough to understand cause and effect, which is important. Then follow up by asking him what he thinks he could do to ensure that this doesn't happen again, right? And also helping him be part of what he believes the consequences of his action should be. So Mark is 14. He can kind of understand everything, right? And all the things that go into why he shouldn't have done what why he shouldn't have stole the quarters, right? And why he shouldn't have lied, right? And so it's really important to ask those questions that's going to get him to not only be accountable for his actions, but also accountable for what he thinks the consequences should be. And the consequences for a 14-year-old could be you're not allowed to go to the arcade anymore. Maybe or you're not allowed to go to the arcade for a while, right? Or maybe the next time you go to the arcade, you have to take your sibling with you, right? Something like that to really create a dynamic that fosters community. Good job, y'all. Let's see if you get the next one. All right. So Alana is 5 and Jamie is 6, and they are sisters. One day, Jamie gets upset because she couldn't get an ice cream cone like her sister, so she slaps it out of her hand. Take a moment and think about your next steps. Pause the video and jot them down. And when you're ready, you know what to do. It's very important that with young children, we remember to first validate their feelings. Saying something like, I can understand that not getting an ice cream cone would make you frustrated. Then asking, how do you feel? Do you feel frustrated? Follow up by asking a question to elicit understanding from your child. Why did you hit the ice cream out of your sister's hand? Right? Because at the end of the day, I want to know, right? What prompted that behavior, right? Your thought was you were frustrated. What prompted that behavior, right? We can expect that your child might say that they don't know at this age because they're very young, right? Or they might be like, because I was mad, right? And that's perfectly normal because at least you're getting a response, right? You also want to make sure that you check in with Alana, right, who is the younger sibling, right, to see how she's feeling, right? Sitting them down together is important. That way, it can teach the children how to have a mediation and how to apologize and the power of forgiveness, right? They are very young. So at this age, you are teaching them both multiple things at the same time. You're teaching them that when you do something wrong, you're supposed to apologize and to forgive your sister for making a mistake, right? Twofold. As a team, you all can decide what an appropriate consequence might be. You can think back to the examples before, or you can add something else, right? So maybe since Jamie slapped the ice cream out of Alana's hand today, maybe Jamie doesn't get an ice cream tomorrow, right? Or maybe Jamie has to use her little money that she has to buy Alana a new ice cream, right? So that she shows that she's repairing the harm that's done. Did you guess that? I think you did. One more. All right. Here's the big one. Your 10-year-old Devin posts something inappropriate on TikTok. What do you do? Pause the video and press play when you're ready. So I know we're all pros now, and I know we're gonna get this one. So I'm gonna assume that you said something like, ask him to tell you what he was thinking when he posted the picture, right? Then you ask him if he knows the rules around social media and what should and shouldn't be posted on social media, followed by what he thinks his consequence should be since he went against what he knew the rules were, right? Very simple. Whatever his consequence he comes up with, right? He might be like, no TikTok for a little while, right? That's a fair consequence for a 10-year-old. Um, you may be like, you know what? From now on, we have a shared TikTok account for a while, right? Where if you want to post something, we post together, right? And that could be a little embarrassing for a 10-year-old, but it's also building community and family, right? Maybe now y'all do fun TikToks together so that you can monitor the page and he can still get his TikTok time. Did you think that? I think you did. All right, y'all. Good job on the scenarios. So we are coming to the end of our beautiful day. Just want to give you some tools and takeaways. Remember that you can always go back in this video at any point and look at things, take things, use what you need. Introduce restorative skills into your daily lives. Skills like problem solving, empathy, positivity, and communication are all critical for restorative practices to be effective. And while these things are all introduced through other aspects of your parenting, make an effort to discuss and model these through your day to day interactions. Okay. Use conflict as a learning opportunity. When conflict arises, whether between two or more siblings or between a parent and a child, use it as an opportunity to engage in restorative conversation. Start a dialogue to identify the origin of the problem and identify the feelings associated with the conflict. Remember to lead by example, okay? Invite your children to share things about themselves. Restorative practices take young people and their likes and their dislikes into account. By getting to know the whole child as they transcend through different stages of development, knowing your child will help you understand their behavioral patterns. Recognize and praise success. Acknowledge your child or children when they engage in respectful dialogue and effective communication, and engage and encourage relationship building, foster strong relationships among families, implement game times, eating together, and unplugging from social media to create a holistic and whole restorative family and restorative world. You can feel free to take a screenshot of this. This is just a keepsake. Um, Remembering that restorative justice builds relationships, right? Respect, right? Our opportunity for decision making, right? All these things can be found through restorative justice, right? If crimes hurt, justice should heal. The focus is on repairing families, repairing the dynamics, creating stronger families, creating stronger communities, and creating stronger bonds. These are our resources to all the things that were highlighted in this webinar. If you need them, I will also make sure to put them in the description. I want to thank you so much for taking time to chat with me and to sit here through another webinar. I hope you really enjoyed it and you will implement restorative practices into your families. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, feelings, or you just want to know about day one, please feel free to email me at any time and I will make sure to get back to you. Thank you so much, and I hope you have an amazing day and make good choices. Bye.